Have you ever felt a deep, inexplicable pattern in your life? Perhaps a persistent struggle or a strong reaction that just doesn't seem to originate with you, like you're carrying a story that isn't quite your own. I know I've certainly felt that pull sometimes. Today, we're embarking on a truly fascinating deep dive into a profound concept, inherited family trauma. Our guide for this journey is the incredibly insightful book, It Didn't Start With You: How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who We Are and How to End the Cycle. This deep dive, well, it'll offer you a powerful shortcut to understanding how the past, even generations back, actively shapes your present. And most importantly, how you can find pathways to peace and, truly author your own story.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to trace those invisible threads that connect us. We're drawing from cutting-edge science, insightful clinical observations, and some really compelling personal stories. We want to reveal how fragmented memories, experiences can echo through generations, and show you how to identify these hidden influences and discover practical tools to shift those long-standing patterns and, well, embrace a fuller life. What's truly remarkable here, I think, is seeing how modern science is finally providing concrete explanations for what many have intuitively sensed for centuries about our deep connection to our family lineage.
Okay, let's unpack this concept then. Inherited family trauma. It's a big idea, right? But the source makes a compelling case. Our struggles might not just be our own personal battles. They could be deeply linked to the stories, the unresolved pain of our parents, our grandparents, maybe even great-grandparents. The book suggests that pain doesn't always just fade with time. Instead, fragments of life experience, memory, even body sensation can live on, sort of silently seeking resolution in the present generation.
Yeah.
So what's the science telling us about this? I mean, how is this even possible?
That's precisely the fascinating part. Emerging evidence from neuroscience, epigenetics, cellular biology, it now robustly supports this idea. Think about the biological connection for a moment. Before your mother was even born, the precursor cell of your egg was already present in her ovaries while she was in your grandmother's womb.
Wow.
So that means 3 generations shared the same biological environment.
3 generations.
Right. And the paternal lines can be traced in similar ways too. So in a very real sense, we were present biologically, with our ancestors.
That's a profound thought, that we're literally carrying elements of our ancestors within us. It's kind of mind-bending. And what about the impact of stress during that really early stage of development?
Right. Well, studies have shown that even prenatal stress can leave a lasting mark on a child's neurodevelopment. Researchers have measured stress hormones like cortisol in the amniotic fluid of pregnant mothers. And they found that babies exposed to increased cortisol in utero showed impaired cognitive development later on. Essentially, a pregnant mother's stress hormones can induce the same stressful state in the unborn child. And that can potentially lead to issues like hyperactivity or irritability later in life. It really highlights how deeply our earliest environments shape us even before we're born.
So it's not just about what happened to them, but literally what happened within them.
Okay.
But how does this get passed down across generations, beyond that immediate prenatal period? This is where epigenetics comes in, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like something out of science fiction, but you're saying it's very real.
It is incredibly real, yes. And this is truly a crucial piece of the puzzle. Epigenetics refers to these chemical signals that attach to our DNA. They tell genes to activate or silence, so they change the gene's expression without actually altering the underlying DNA sequence itself. As one researcher puts it, genes seem to retain some memory of their past experiences.
Huh. Memory in the gene.
Exactly. Groundbreaking research, like studies on pregnant women who experienced the 9/11 attacks and developed PTSD, they found that their children had altered gene expression along with lower cortisol levels. This suggests the trauma was biologically marked and, well, transmitted.
So our bodies literally carry the echoes of history, fundamentally shaping our present reactions in ways we never consciously understood. It's mind-blowing. And I remember the source also mentioned animal studies. What have those shown?
They provide even more compelling evidence, really. For instance, mouse studies have demonstrated how maternal separation stress can cause gene expression changes traceable for 3 generations in offspring.
3 generations.
Yeah.
From stress.
Yes. And another study showed mice inheriting not only a sensitivity to a specific scent their ancestors learned to fear, but also the fear response itself, complete with associated brain changes. These are direct, measurable transmissions of trauma responses.
That's incredibly powerful. Wow. And this isn't just about individual families or specific lineages, is it? The source implies the impact can be much broader, almost like a collective experience. How does it describe that?
Exactly right. The book points out that secondary PTSD can manifest in children of traumatized parents. For example, about 30% of kids with a parent who served in Iraq or Afghanistan and developed PTSD, well, they struggle with similar symptoms themselves.
Hmm.
Even more strikingly, it mentions young people born after 1994 in Rwanda experiencing PTSD symptoms similar to those who actually witnessed the genocide. It suggests a kind of contagion in the collective subconscious, demonstrating how widespread trauma can echo through a community, not just a single family line.
That's a heavy thought, really heavy. But is all this inherited trauma just a burden? Or, can there be a silver lining somewhere in this?
Yeah. That's a really important question to ask. Rachel Yehuda, the researcher we mentioned earlier, who studied the 9/11 survivors and their children, she suggests that these epigenetic changes aren't simply deficits. They're not just negative. They might actually expand our stress response range, potentially forging a legacy of strength and resilience.
Oh, okay.
Understanding this helps us grasp our true capabilities and potentials, rather than just focusing on what was lost or difficult. It's about recognizing the adaptive capacities that might have been gained along the way.
Okay, that's a helpful reframe.
Yeah.
So if our past is so deeply embedded, how does it actually play out in our day-to-day lives? How do these invisible threads manifest? The source introduces Bert Hellinger, a renowned German psychotherapist, and his concept of family consciousness. How does this unseen system impact us?
Right. Hellinger's work reviews that we share this deep, often unconscious connection with all biological family members who came before us, even those we never met. And traumatic events within this system, things like the premature death of a parent or a sibling or a child, or instances of abandonment, crime, suicide, these can send shockwaves of distress across generations. What's crucial and maybe a bit controversial is Hellinger's emphasis on inclusion. He argues that even those we might typically exclude, like a previous partner of a parent or grandparent, or even someone who harmed a family member, they must be acknowledged within our family system.
Really, even someone who caused harm?
Yes, because their absence or their unacknowledged role profoundly affects later generations, according to this theory.
Okay, so it's not just about the people we actively celebrate or remember, but everyone who played a significant role in the lineage. And what happens when someone isn't included or is rejected from this family system?
This is where the concept of entanglement comes in, and it's a profound observation from Hellinger's work. When someone is rejected, forgotten, or sort of left out of the family system, a later member might unconsciously represent them.
Represent them? How?
It means you might find yourself sharing or repeating their fate, behaving in similar ways or repeating their suffering, even if you have no conscious knowledge of them or their story. You might unknowingly carry the feelings, the symptoms, the behaviors, or the hardships of an earlier family member as if they were your very own.
So an entanglement is essentially living out someone else's unfinished story.
Wow. Can you give us some examples of how that might look in real life? It sounds quite abstract.
Absolutely. The source provides some really compelling illustrations.
Yeah.
Imagine, say, a grandfather who was rejected by the family for drinking or gambling. A descendant, maybe generations later, might adopt those very behaviors, seemingly out of nowhere, without understanding why.
Or, within the same family, different children born to the same parents might inherit different traumas. A firstborn son could unconsciously carry unresolved issues with the father, perhaps, while a firstborn daughter might carry her mother's unspoken burdens or patterns. For instance, the book mentions a first daughter marrying an emotionally unavailable man, mirroring her mother's discontent in her own marriage, while maybe her younger sister carries the unexpressed anger of the mother. It's truly a complex web,
The idea that we can unconsciously carry these patterns and experiences,
Yeah.
it's truly profound. But if these influences are so hidden, so unconscious, how do we even begin to bring them to light? How do we figure this out? The source introduces a powerful way to do this, the core language approach. What is this secret language of suffering, and how do we learn to speak it?
Right. This powerful method is all about helping you translate those inchoate feelings, that gut feeling or persistent image or recurring phrase, into a language that reveals the root of your suffering. It helps connect it directly to an unspoken family history. It suggests that while trauma can sometimes make us lose our words, a kind of secret language of suffering still exists. It's there in fragments of images, body sensations, specific words, just waiting to be rediscovered.
Okay, so how do we start to decode it? What are the tools this approach uses?
Well, this approach uses 4 key tools to uncover what the source calls the core trauma. First, There's your core complaint. This is your presenting problem, right? That initial what's wrong statement you bring forward. It's essentially the surface symptom you're experiencing. It's where we start the investigation, so to speak.
So the symptom you're consciously aware of, like anxiety or maybe a relationship issue.
Precisely. Then the second tool, we look at core descriptors. When you describe your parents, or sometimes even partners or bosses, you often unwittingly reveal unconscious resentments and, importantly, patterns. For example, if you consistently describe your mother as, say, cold or distant, those become key descriptors.
Okay.
And what's fascinating here is that research, like a long-term Harvard study mentioned in the book, has shown a strong correlation between strained parent relationships and significant health issues later in life, including connections to conditions like cancer and heart disease. So these descriptors aren't just words, they're often echoes of deep emotional landscapes with real health implications.
That's a powerful connection between our early relationships and our physical well-being much later.
Okay.
What's the next step in uncovering this secret language?
The third tool is finding the core sentence. This is described as a short, often dramatic, emotionally charged sentence capturing your greatest fear. It often begins with I or they and typically causes a strong physical reaction like a tightening in your chest or throat when you speak it aloud.
How do you find it?
You can often find it by asking yourself, if this feeling or symptom I have were never to go away, what would be the absolute worst thing that could happen to me? Sometimes it even emerges unexpectedly from a powerful scene in a book or movie that deeply affects you. And the really pertinent question here is, are these your words? Or could they be someone else's, echoing from the past?
Right. Are you speaking your own fear or an inherited one? Okay. And once you have that core sentence, that intense little phrase, where does it lead you?
That leads to the final tool, identifying the core trauma. This is the underlying traumatic event or pattern of events in your family history that seems directly connected to your core sentence. It can be unearthed through what the author calls bridging questions, specific questions designed to connect your core sentence to potential family experiences. Or sometimes by constructing a genogram, which is essentially a detailed family tree that maps out significant life events, losses, relationships, traumas across generations.
Okay, this is getting really practical now. Let's take these powerful concepts and connect them to real people and their experiences directly from the source material. These stories really illustrate how these hidden dynamics play out. There's a story of Jesse, remember, a 19-year-old student who developed persistent insomnia. He kept waking up freezing cold at 3:30 a.m. with this irrational fear of not waking up again. And the bridging question about family trauma involving cold, sleep, or the age 19, it revealed his uncle Colin had tragically frozen to death at 19 checking power lines. Jesse was unconsciously reenacting his uncle's death, almost like holding his memory in his body.
It's astonishing, isn't it? How specific these reenactments can be, down to the exact age or the physical sensations. Jesse's case truly highlights the depth of this unconscious loyalty. The body, as they say, holds the score.
Exactly. Or take Gretchen. Her suffering led her to have thoughts of wanting to vaporize herself in molten steel. The terrifying image. When asked about family involvement in the Holocaust, it was revealed her grandmother's entire family had perished in Auschwitz, gaffed, and then incinerated. Gretchen's terrifying words, that specific imagery didn't seem to originate with her own life experience. They were a direct, chilling echo of her grandmother's horrific trauma manifesting generations later.
Yes, that example is particularly striking because of the direct correlation between the language of her suffering and the historical event. It shows how profoundly these extreme experiences can embed themselves in the family consciousness, just waiting, in a way, for an opportunity to be expressed or resolved.
Another powerful example is Carson. He was 24, experiencing panic attacks and this pervasive fear that he'd leave no legacy, no one will remember me. His bridging question led back to his father, who had lost parental rights when Carson was just 4 years old and was effectively erased from his life. Carson was unconsciously sharing his father's profound pain of having lost his living legacy, his connection to his children.
What's so poignant about Carson's story is how he was carrying an emotional burden, a fear of being forgotten that really belonged to his father, not him. These stories really underscore how suffering can be passed down, not as a conscious choice, of course, but as an unconscious inheritance seeking recognition.
There are so many compelling examples in the book, aren't there? There was also Sandy, who developed claustrophobia and a fear of not being able to breathe after her father's death, intensified at age 19. Her core language, knowing that I'm going to die and I can't do anything to stop it, it's totally out of my control, directly echoed her grandparents and aunt, who were asphyxiated in Auschwitz. And Lorena, whose core sentence about being a loser and contemplating suicide led her to uncover a history with her grandfather and great aunt. Both were rejected by the family, institutionalized, and her grandfather ultimately died by suicide. Lorena felt she was tragically in line for a loser trifecta, bringing to light this devastating pattern of rejection and self-destruction echoing through her family lineage. And then there's Carol. She struggled with her weight for years and felt deeply betrayed by her body. Her bridging questions, exploring feelings about women being betrayed by their wombs or terrible things happening if they became a woman. They revealed a shocking family story. Her grandmother had accidentally suffocated her newborn baby, and apparently, 2 other babies were effectively smothered by the weight in her womb during pregnancy or birth. This hidden history became Carol's core trauma, a profound inherited somatic experience related to her body and womanhood.
These examples, while deeply personal and sometimes shocking, they illustrate a universal principle that our deepest struggles often have roots far beyond our individual experience. They're like echoes of unresolved pain, reverberating through time, seeking completion or healing in the present.
Okay, so the good news in all of this, the hopeful part, is that these cycles can be broken. Healing, as the source emphasizes, is truly an inside job. What does the science tell us about our capacity for change? Can we really rewire this stuff?
This is absolutely where the hope lies. Norman Doidge's work on neuroplasticity, which the book touches on, shows us that the brain is far more flexible and capable of profound change than we used to think. The principle of neurons that fire together, wire together, means that new experiences, new thoughts, new visualizations. They can literally create new neural pathways in the brain, allowing us to shift those old ingrained patterns.
So we're not stuck.
Not at all. Even practices like meditation have been shown in studies, like one from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, to cause actual genetic and molecular changes. Things like decreasing pro-inflammatory genes, which helps our physical recovery from stress. Our bodies and brains are inherently designed for adaptation and healing.
Okay, that's really encouraging. So once you've done the deep work, identified that core sentence, maybe connected it to an ancestral link, what's next? How do you actually move towards healing this?
That's when you can begin to consciously use tools like what the author calls healing sentences and visualization. The goal is to create new internal images and actively shift those old patterns. Think back to Jesse, the young man with insomnia linked to his Uncle Colin.
Right, the one waking up freezing.
Exactly. Once he understood the link, he used visualization. He pictured his uncle and consciously told him, "From now on, Uncle Colin, you'll live on in my heart, not in my sleeplessness." And remarkably, this helped him sleep through the night. This isn't magic, it's leveraging how the brain works. Brain research shows that imagining an experience actually activates the same neurons as if it were really happening, effectively creating new neural pathways and associations.
That's incredibly powerful, the idea that a simple shift in internal dialogue coupled with visualization can have such a profound and tangible impact. What other pathways to healing does this source highlight?
Well, the author shares his own healing journey, which involved returning to his parents later in life and consciously working to accept their love as they could give it, not as he had perhaps always expected or needed it as a child. He realized his own early separation from his mother, coupled with inherited traumas from grandparents who had lost their parents early. This had forged his own secret language of fear, phrases like alone, helpless, ruined. Repairing this bond, doing that internal work with his parents, brought him profound peace. And remarkably, he even reports it restored his 20/20 vision, despite doctors telling him he had permanent scarring on his retina.
Wow, that's quite a story.
It is. And the source really highlights that making peace with your parents, whether they are alive or deceased, whether it involves direct interaction or purely internal work, is often crucial for your own inner peace, your relationships, and even your physical health.
That's such a beautiful and tangible example of the power of reconciliation, even if it's just internal. What are some of the specific practices or maybe rituals the book suggests for moving through this healing process, things people can actually do?
Yes, there are several practical tools mentioned. You can practice speaking to family members, either the real person if appropriate and possible, or just their image in your mind, to consciously return the burden. This might involve saying something specific like, "This doesn't belong to me, I honor you, but I will leave these anxious feelings," or whatever the burden is with you. Another practice is placing a photo of an ancestor, maybe one connected to the trauma, on your desk or above your bed. You can use it as a focal point to practice releasing their burden and consciously choosing to receive their blessings or strengths instead. Writing a letter to a deceased person, even knowing they'll never receive it, can bring a powerful sense of completion for unresolved issues.
Hmm.
You can also develop a supportive image, like imagining a guardian angel or a wise ancestor figure to provide comfort and strength. For those who feel burdened by, say, caretaking roles inherited through the family, simply creating a symbolic boundary the book mentions, tracing a circle with yarn around yourself, can help reclaim personal space and energy. And finally, simple self-soothing practices. Placing a hand on your heart or belly, breathing deeply, and telling your inner child, "I've got you," or "I'll stay with you," can be incredibly powerful for grounding yourself in the present.
Right. So it seems this whole process, it isn't about blaming anyone in our family history for our struggles, is it? It's really about understanding the deep currents, the unseen loyalties and burdens that flow through families. And by making these connections between your present challenges and unresolved events in your family history, you can actually stop unconsciously repeating painful patterns. You can cultivate truly positive changes in your relationships, your health, your overall well-being. It's about empowering yourself to write a new chapter. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I think that this deep dive really reveals that the greatest resources for healing are often already inside us, just waiting to be excavated. Healing truly is an inside job, and the power to break these cycles, it lies within your own awareness and your intention to understand and integrate the past.
Absolutely. And maybe this raises a final important question for you to consider. How might understanding your family's unspoken history, these hidden legacies, how might that profoundly change the way you view your own challenges? And perhaps, just perhaps, unlock entirely new possibilities for your future that you hadn't even considered before?